Rispa, the mother who challenged kings, laws, and death for the love of her children. Have you ever wondered how far a mother's love can go? How far can loss, humiliation, and injustice take her? In the Bible, we find Rispa, a woman whose story not only moves us but also challenges us to deeply reflect on unconditional love, human dignity, and divine justice. This account is not only a lesson in courage but also in resistance, a timeless example that continues to touch the deepest parts of our being. Rispa was no ordinary woman, nor a secondary figure in the pages of biblical history. She was the concubine of King Saul, the first monarch of Israel, and the mother of two sons, Armani and Mephibosheth. In an era where royal lineage was seen as both a blessing and a heavy burden, Rispa lived under the constant weight of politics and power struggles that marked the nation. Her sons, born under complicated circumstances, bore the stigma of their lineage, while the nation of Israel was divided into two great factions, those loyal to Saul and those loyal to David. The fall of Saul, the king who had ruled with an iron fist, marked the beginning of a period of chaos for Israel. After his death, and the death of his son Jonathan in battle against the Philistines, the kingdom split. Ishbosheth, another son of Saul, assumed leadership in the north, while David, a man later described as a man after God's own heart, ruled over Judah in the south. The struggle for power not only divided the people but also planted deep wounds in the soul of the nation. During David's reign, Israel endured 3 long years of drought, a crisis that not only affected agriculture but was interpreted by the people as a divine punishment. Desperate, David sought the wisdom of God to understand the cause of the suffering, and the answer was clear: the drought was a consequence of an ancient injustice. Saul, the previous king, had violated a sacred covenant with the Gibeonites, a people whom Israel had sworn to protect during the time of Joshua. The breaking of this oath, an act of betrayal against an allied people, required restitution. The Gibeonites, when consulted by David, rejected any form of material compensation. They didn't want gold or silver, let alone Israeli blood. Instead, they demanded a sacrifice to atone for Saul's sin, the delivery of 7 descendants from Saul's house. David, though reluctant, understood the gravity of the situation and accepted the demand. Thus, 2 of Rispa's sons, Armani and Mephibosheth, along with 5 of Saul's grandsons, were selected to pay with their lives for the transgression committed by their grandfather. The execution of the 7 men took place at the beginning of the barley harvest. The bodies were hung on a hill as a public sign of shame, exposed to the scorching sun and the cruel indifference of those who saw this act as divine justice. But what no one expected was Rispa's reaction. Instead of retreating, overwhelmed by the pain of her loss, Rispa rose with a strength that only a mother's love can inspire. She put on a sackcloth, a garment symbolizing mourning and repentance, and decided to stay by her sons' bodies, refusing to let their remains be dishonored. For months, she endured extreme conditions: the heat of the day, the cold of the night, the rain, hunger, and loneliness, all while protecting her sons' bodies from scavenger birds and wild animals. Her vigil was a silent battle against injustice, an act of love that turned into resistance. Rispa was not only defending her sons' honor, but also human dignity in a society that had abandoned them to their fate. This act was not just a cry of pain but a declaration of resistance in a time when women's voices were minimized, ignored, or silenced. Rispa, through her sacrifice, became a symbol of bravery. In a time when dignity was a precious and scarce commodity, she fought for what remained, the memory of her sons, who would not be forgotten or humiliated beyond death. The news of Rispa's vigil quickly reached King David. At first, he likely thought it was simply incomprehensible grief, but as Rispa's sacrifice continued, something began to stir his heart. David understood that what Rispa was doing was not just an act of love but a profound protest against the injustice and humiliation of her sons. It was this gesture that awakened in David the need to restore the dignity that had been denied to these men's bodies. Moved by Rispa's devotion, David made a decision that would change the course of the situation. He ordered that the bodies of the 7 men, including Rispa's sons, be gathered and buried with dignity in the tomb of Saul and Jonathan, at the ancestral site of their family. This gesture was not merely symbolic but a true restoration of the honor that had been violated. It wasn't just a physical burial but an act of spiritual restoration for the nation. Rispa's story doesn't end with the burial of the bodies. The Bible recounts that after this act of justice, rain finally came to Israel. This event marked the end of the drought that had devastated the land for 3 long years. The restoration of the land's fertility was not just a natural phenomenon, but also a clear sign that reconciliation with the past and respect for human dignity had paved the way for divine blessing. Rispa's story is more than an ancient account. It is a profound lesson about the unconditional love of a mother, about sacrifice for dignity and justice, and about how our actions can transcend even the deepest pain. Rispa challenges us to ask ourselves if we are willing to fight for what we believe is right, even when the price is high. She invites us to reflect on our own lives. What are we willing to do for those we love? Are we willing to resist injustice, to defend what is worthy, even when the world looks at us with indifference? Rispa's story is not only a testimony of a mother who didn't give up but a reminder that justice, dignity, and true love can transform even the darkest circumstances. Tell us, what do you think about this story? If this account inspired you or made you reflect, leave us a comment and share this video so more people can learn the story of Rispa. Subscribe to the channel for more impact-filled stories.